Hello, lovely people. Thank you for joining me for another interview. In this interview, we're going to talk to Aaron Rudman-Hawkins. Gentleman owns the Evergreen Agency down in Oxfordshire. He's been running that for 8 years, won numerous awards, but more importantly, it's about the man behind the brand. How did he get there? And it isn't just looking at it from a business point of view, it's really looking at the ethics, the things that make that business different from every other one that's out there, specifically in the agency world. I've been following Aaron for just over 12 months, probably closer to the 18 months. And I can tell you it's refreshing to see that he doesn't just push the business. He pushes the individuals within the business. And naturally that can have like the law of reciprocity, it can move the business forward, which it has. But it's not just about the bottom line. It's about how he sees the potential in other people, because it's the potential in himself that he's sharing with you and inspiring as an entrepreneur. So join me in this interview where he drops so many knowledge bombs. His enthusiasm, his passion, everything resonates to the power of 10. It is really refreshing. I hope you see what I've been following over the last couple of months and share some of the knowledge that he's got that will inspire your brand to move forward and actually benefit from it. So join me in the interview where we talk to Aaron Rudman-Hawkins. Thank you. Thank you for joining myself today. As you can see in this interview now, we have the wonderful Aaron Rudman-Hawkins, who runs the Evergreen Agency. Thank you for joining me today, Aaron.
Pleasure.
So yeah, let's get straight into it then. Give me a little bit of history about yourself and how you came to, run your own agency.
Okay, so well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. So Evergreen's been going for 8 years. 8 years ago, I very definitely did not set out to start an agency. I set out wanted to go freelance. I wanted to do my own thing. I'd been working in the SEO space for a number of years prior to go freelance, and I had a very set way of working. I like to do things in a very evergreen way, and that just meant doing things with real transparency. I was never one in the 2000s of following the norm at that time, which was a lot of spamming, there were a lot of hats being worn. There were a lot of black hat and grey hat and white hat. And for anyone in the digital space, you'll know what I'm talking about. I never really bought into that. I had a very set way of working that I couldn't find within another agency. So I said, what the heck? I'm going to go and do my own thing. First 5 years, so from 2013 through 2018, was just me, one-man band, working my back bedroom, you know what it's like, yep. And did that very successfully. Got to a point where the demand was such that I thought either I'm going to continue to turn work away, or I'm going to have to embrace and think a little bit bigger. Probably took a good 6 months to really toy with that of, do I want to stay a one-man band and have that lifestyle business, or do I actually want to grow a proper business? The entrepreneurial spirit won out.
Did you get that from your partner as well?
It's well, quite exactly that. So and the entrepreneurial spirit sort of won out, and then I said, what the heck, let's go for it. And so that was, best part of 3 years ago now, and we've been on one heck of a journey ever since.
Yeah, and to give it some context, I've been following you for probably about 18 months, probably maybe a bit longer, I don't know. LinkedIn is obviously where I follow you, so I will put a link in the description below for anyone else who wants to obviously link up and follow your journey. But what I found quite refreshing was the approach you take. That is different. I think you alluded to it earlier, where you came from a background of agencies where, not to do the agency service any disservice, I think they were finding their way. Trying to make sense of how this SEO sort of fits in the equation, how important it is. And like you alluded to, the white hat, the black hat and the grey hat, no one really knew, because it was about get the result for the client. I think the transparency and the honesty has something that has shone through over time. And that's obviously lined itself with things like the EAT algorithm from Google. So I think that the client, as much as the agency, are becoming that much more savvy. So you mentioned it there, you worked for your back bedroom, as did I, and then you took that decision to obviously escalate and become an agency. What sort of fears and trepidations did you have with that?
Just about all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's For me, so one of the key things I decided at that point is if I was going to do this, I was going to need a coach. I was going to need someone, a sounding board, someone to hold my hand through this journey, because I didn't know how to do it. I had some ideas, and I sort of took learnings from my past experience of working in various agencies, yeah, just sort of took it one step at a time. One of the key things I did back in 2018 is I really thought about, where do I want to go? How big an agency do I want to build, and what is the end goal really? And that for me was key, because I knew that I'm not trying to build a 100-person, £10 million agency. I don't aspire to do that. And just having a sense of how far I do want to go and what that looks like in real terms, that really focused the mind. And then from there, we were able to sort of break it down and go, okay, if we want to be there in 5 years and we want to be there in 10 years, okay, where does that mean we need to be in 12 months? And then if we know 12 months, where do we need to be in 3 months? And then in 3 months, okay, what do I need to do now? And it was, and ever since, this last 3 years has been like that. It's just been working, goal setting, and then moving on, and then hitting that marker, and then the next and the next.
In fairness, you paint that as a very simple approach, but it's an approach that is massively missed by most businesses. I know when I run my own company, I didn't do any of that. I just kept busy being busy. And it's only then when we hit a recession and you suddenly see clients fall away, you're thinking, well, we didn't plan for anything else because we're just so busy being busy. So having a marketing strategy, setting goals and objectives, and then bring them down into that minuscule level that you can implement them bit by bit is the smart approach. So I think more people are getting savvy nowadays. They realize that, as you alluded to, nobody wants to run a 100-person agency. All you do is firefighting and HR and dealing with difficult clients. And I worked for one agency where that's what the owner did all the time, and I never envied him, to be honest. He was a lovely chap, but I thought, oh my God, I don't want a taste of that. Hence the reason when I went freelance, I thought I was happy it was just me. But you're right, you get to a point where you've got to have this vision. What are you doing that sets you apart from anywhere else? Now, I kind of could answer this question for you, but I'd like to hear it from you. How do you feel that the Evergreen Agency differs from every other sort of creative marketing agency out there?
Okay, it's a great question. So for me, the one thing first and foremost, I love my craft. So I genuinely have a real love and passion for SEO. And I think if you genuinely love whatever it is you do, I think that is telling. And if you're honest and open with your passion for your craft, people resonate with that. They see that. And you mentioned my LinkedIn earlier. That for us is a great source of leads. It's been a great source of making connections, meeting people, networking. And a great source of inspiration. And one of the things I've done since day one is just been very honest and open in terms of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and just kind of put it out there. And people like that because it's real. And one of the things in the SEO space particularly is it has this reputation over the last sort of decade or so of being quite smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of cloak and daggers. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people that have had their fingers burned. The number of times I hear that and stuff like that. And so actually one of the things that was a very conscious decision that I made is, if I'm going to build an agency, one, I want the agency to sort of be built and have a culture that's very reflective of how I like to work. And I want to be in an office. I want to have a team that genuinely love what they do, almost to the point where you do it if you weren't getting paid kind of philosophy, kind of mentalities. You just genuinely love it. And when we've done recruitment, when we built a team, that's been the real focus is, okay, as long as you love this, we can mold you, we can build you, we can train you. And then I've sort of taken that and woven that into how we've then presented the agency. And so I think what sets us apart, and this from our clients, is that we genuinely care. So for me, I set out 3 years ago to build an agency that was big enough to cope but small enough to care. And that is really simple sort of approach, but we've done and are still doing that. We're about 13, 14 people now. So it's been, for me to sort of that number in a couple of years has been a hell of a journey. And that's one of the things that I think has set us apart is our clients genuinely love us. They know that we will genuinely do what's best for them, and we'll change tack and we'll do whatever is required to actually. And it's just the whole way from top to bottom. It's how we're set up in terms of how we work, how we communicate, what we do, how we present ourselves, how honest and open we are in terms of everything from emails through communication, through reporting, through getting them in the office, you name it.
Yeah, it comes across. It's the one thing you said. It's your passion. If you've got the passion in whatever industry you're in, it will resonate. That will differentiate you from all your competitors. It's that, I call it the gaff factor, give a fuck. It's blunt, it's crude, but it really gets the point across, and people understand, right, that's why I'm going for you. But I get exactly how you explain all that, and you put it out there as a strategy, but I'm sure that actually doing it and living and breathing it day in, day out is a damn sight bloody harder, because having this vision and then seeing it come to fruition, so much harder. To add some, to fair context to, those that will be watching and listening to this, I know where you've been honest and you've taken an approach that's not the norm. You alluded to it where you mentioned smoke and mirrors, and very much agencies are like that. They don't always like to show what's happening behind the scenes, and it's that perception and reality approach. One of your posts in particular that resonated with me was where you lost 3 clients, but you were, you toyed with whether you should make it public or not. I like that over the shoulder approach, because when you mentioned like open and transparent, it was an overused term on so many homepages of agencies for years, but you're thinking, yeah, but how? And then when you go and look then for the subsequent evidence to give the credibility and reinforce that, it wasn't there. It was literally just marketing spiel for the sake of marketing spiel. What I've come to like with yourself, and this is not from a fanzine point of view, it's genuinely what I like, is that you give that insider view, but you delve down up to a personal level as well. Like just this week, now we were congratulating Josie, and obviously with her permission, you were given an insight of how much commitment your staff have made on your behalf. And I think that's where COVID, has thrown us all a curveball, but I also think it's a wonderful step change. It's given the opportunity to the entrepreneur to say, right, okay, if I build a business around my passion, because it used to always be is you shouldn't do it if you want to make money out of it because it'll kill your passion. And there's another conversation to be had there. But ultimately, it will also drive your business. It'll make you do those 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And that way, then, when people see that and you're at the coalface and your staff see it specifically, they'll buy into that culture. And culture is a very strong word when you're taking on staff.
Yeah.
You can either work in a very toxic environment, or you can work in a very creative one where people want to come in and do their job. Whereas I've worked in 2 toxic environments. They are what they are because it comes from the top down. It dictates everything, and it changes the mechanics. People don't enjoy their job. They do what is required, but they don't go above and beyond. So obviously you're not like Stephen Bartlett with his social chain. There's probably no ball pits in there and slides, but you never know. I do see green.
Give it time.
Give it time. I do see the green wall there. You never know. The other element I quite like about what you're doing is, whether it was strategic or just a happy coincidence, is how you've been on brand. Like, you chose your name, and I'll ask you that question in a minute, how you did that. But like, you're seeing the plants everywhere, you're softening the environment, you're making it more welcoming, more refreshing. And I think people that the ground, or the gray areas were between home life and work life, needs to be a little bit more blurred. People feel they don't need that clinical feel. They're coming into a concrete building, all the stainless steel is exposed, they've got the laptops, these are cool areas to work in, but they lack character and atmosphere and people huddling together. Whereas if you soften it and make it more inviting, it almost feels like I could get the laptop, do my work, and I could chill out on the settee by here. And I think that's a refreshing approach that I've noticed in a lot of agencies. Yours is included as well.
Yeah.
So sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, absolutely, and that is very intentional. And for me, it's all part of one and the same thing, right? I wanted and want to surround myself with people that genuinely love what they do, and have I'm very mindful that the team are, as you rightly say, it comes from the top down. So how I am day to day, what I bring into the office every day and what I leave every day with is going to reflect and bounce off the rest of the team. So if I come in with an attitude or an arrogance or an approach that's not conducive, they are going to be reflective of that. Whereas what I like to do is, I bounce into this office every day with that much enthusiasm and that much passion and energy that the team feed off that, and then similarly I feed off them, and it works. And a part of that is we moved into this, I say a couple of years ago when we first started building the team, we were hot desking, we didn't have an office. We've only had this office for 2.5 years now, and we managed to find an amazing office, which I'm sat in at the moment, which is a converted barn, really, really amazing. But it needed an upgrade. It needed a lick of paint. It needed, so we invested a lot of money in this, and we very intentionally I wanted to create an environment that people felt relaxed in, because it's so important that you don't just have a sterile environment and one where people just come in. I didn't want people to just come to work. I wanted them to actually come and really enjoy the atmosphere, the camaraderie, just a place that they genuinely wanted to be. And so for me, we invested tens of thousands of pounds in doing a full office upgrade and renovation. And yes, all the foliage. We've got a whacking great evergreen wall that we've put up. We even put new lighting in, new flooring in. We've just recently it's going on right now. I've literally got builders next door. We've knocked through into the adjacent office unit because it became available. And where we're growing, we've actually knocked through. So we've more than doubled the office size. We'll sort of have 20, 25 desks in total. And that has been a project. And over this, we've used COVID. We've used that time where people were working remotely to invest massively in creating an environment that people want to be in. I mean, we've probably, over the last 12 months, we've invested over £100,000 purely in the aesthetic and the environment that we want to create for our team, because we know we'll get more from the team. It's for the clients as well, and it sets the tone. And as you say, if you were a fly on the wall in our office, you would genuinely see the team kicking back on sofas and beanbags with their shoes off. They're relaxed. They're working on their laptops. There's various collaborative areas where they can I'm in one of them right now. I'm in one of our little meeting rooms. I can just come in here. I've got a huge whiteboard there, big TV here. I can have meetings. I can relax. I can kick back. It's a very informal environment, and that's reflective of our culture, which the team feed off, and then the clients love it as well.
I think a lot you said in there. So a couple of points for me to sort of draw out, and hopefully, some knowledge bombs for people to take away from it. I totally agree with this approach of thinking, what's the sort of environment would my staff like to work in? And the rhyme and the reason for that is that I think that you will get more out of them if they feel more comfortable in that space. Without doubt, you already use it within your title. You call yourself a creative search marketing agency. Creative is such a powerful word, because when people are doing data analytics or they're report writing or they're dealing with clients, you think, yeah, but really, does creative come into that? And it does, because like from my own point of view, where you do say some keyword research and you're thinking, yeah, but I'd rather do it, listen to a little bit of music, be gentle, because you need to get in this zone. You're going to be fixated on whatever the subject may be, and it may be sometimes the most boring subject, but you need to do the due diligence, and you just need to get in that zone and be creative to find the words that you feel are going to move the needle. Same when it comes to content writing, same when it comes to web development, is that just thinking, right, how do we do this? And I mean, I'm currently doing a project with a client at the moment where we're breaking into the US, and we've got to consolidate 4 websites together, shared logins. There's already 2 e-commerce ones that have got to be incorporated. And you start thinking, right, you've got all these obstacles to overcome. But when you're working within a small team and you've got this input coming to you all the time, it keeps it interesting. It keeps it challenging. It keeps it fresh. It doesn't make it feel like it's a chore. And I think that's an important aspect to have. That brings me back to the question I just missed on earlier. How did he come up with the name, and what was the rhyme and reason behind it?
Okay, so Evergreen, for years, I kept coming across the term evergreen content, working this evergreen way, and you've only got to Google it, and you will see that everyone in the SEO digital space has at one stage or another written about doing things, working in an evergreen way, and essentially what that means when you pick it apart is just doing things properly, with transparency, doing things ethically, and essentially just not breaking Google's guidelines is basically the core of it. Is if you create
bow down to the master.
Exactly that, right? The way Google are guarding all the gates, they're holding all the keys. So for years, less so these days, thankfully, but for years, agencies, it was all about who could manipulate the system the best, right? And who was the smartest at way of manipulating. They were the one who won, because it was a numbers game back in the day, right? And so for me, I never liked to do that, and so I think it's a terrible pun, but the seeds were sown for Evergreen back when I was working at a creative agency. I was actually doing, because prior to SEO, I was doing web dev, and I was in those days, and this is going back. I mean, this is early to mid 2000s. So I was in an agency. I was working doing web dev, and as an agency, SEO was kind of in its infancy. It was finding its feet, and as an agency, we were getting asked, "You're building these lovely, pretty websites, but we want them to actually start yielding a return. We need them to start delivering business," which they weren't. They were just being launched, and it was sort of job done, move on to the next. And as an agency, we were getting asked for it. No one in the agency at that time knew. There wasn't an SEO department. No one really knew what it was. So it fell onto my shoulders as one of the sort of the mid-level guys at that agency at that time. They were, no one else wanted to do it, so it fell to me. And they were like, "Aaron, can you just go? And we're getting asked for this SEO stuff. We need to. How does this work?" So I started Googling it, and this is going back. I mean, this is so long ago. I'm talking sort of Link Moses time. I'm thinking OSE stuff. I'm talking real old school SEO, sort of the founding fathers almost of SEO back in the day. The Matt Cutts days and all of that. So I was reading, and I was just swatting up on SEO, and there wasn't anything like the tools or what's out there now. It was complete blank page really, and so I was reading the handful of blogs that were out there, and I started to then implement. And for me, I had more of a conscience. I could just see. I didn't dare do some of these techniques because I just looked at them and thought, I just don't quite. I don't agree with it. It was a bit dodgy, and honestly, I was too scared of doing it because I thought, if that doesn't work, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to mess up for the client, and so really it came from an area of just being a bit intimidated. I daren't do this. So I just started doing things properly because I thought, well, there was no pressure on me in that particular role because no one was doing it. The bar hadn't been set. So I started doing this SEO stuff for the next 2 or 3 years, and I was just doing. And then it was only, and it didn't have an impact, not positive, not negative. It just didn't really seem to work. Then as you get to the late sort of 2000s, early 20s, when the algorithm updates started to come out and Google really started to police the internet, and get good at saying what they've been doing, what they've been saying for 5-6 years, they actually started to be able to do. When that happened, almost overnight, a lot of the stuff I'd been doing, which was a very evergreen way of working, that rose to the top because a lot of sites got manipulated. I mean, I'm going back 2011, when things started to roll out, a lot of sites got manipulated, and all of my stuff rose to the top very, very quickly. Suddenly that transcended me from this guy knows his stuff. This kid's, suddenly I was the SEO expert, right? Even though I'd been doing this stuff for years and I hadn't been working. And that then, and I can almost see the wood for the trees, that then it was, that was sort of like the thing. And then I moved over to another agency, and then it was, so when I came to launch it, to get back to your point, it was very much I'm going to do things in an evergreen way, and I'm going to launch an agency, albeit I plan to be a one-man band agency. So it was like, well, the Evergreen Agency, that works. And that's literally where it came from.
And I love that sort of story of how something, goes from nothing to something. Because I think, for all of us that are true entrepreneurs, there is a journey, there is a back history, and it's nice to know the genuine approach that it comes by. One of the things you talk about there is manipulation. Obviously, all SEO in some way or form, white hat to black hat, is manipulation. And as much as Google doesn't like that, that's just business sense. You know, I put money somewhere that you could use it's quite a negative term, manipulation, in order to move the needle. Then they're going to get a result, be that PR or, any form of PPC. But I think ethical is the thing that's really resonating.
Mm.
And I think since we had that diesel scandal back in 2015 with Volkswagen, the last 2 3 years, that's really the tone of voice I hear very strong in all content out there at the moment, and not in a way that I think is shamelessly plugged to us. I think this is really what's brought into the likes of the EAT policy that Google brought out, is that you see it on TV adverts. Every vehicle that's coming out now is an electric or hybrid, and we're starting to consider more the environment, and too right, we should. But likewise, then you alluded to it there with the content. Everybody wants that evergreen content.
Yeah.
I work 3 days a week for a client who's in the probiotic industry, which is quite a challenge in itself, because what you can and cannot say with the Advertising Standards Agency. So as an SEO person, it's like having already one arm tied behind your back, which is quite frustrating. And then when you're in a meeting and then somebody says, this content's changed, I didn't write that. And then I put my hand up and say, no, that was me. and then you have that ensuing conversation of, but it's for a rhyme and reason. And it's finding that comfortable place where you're trying to push the envelope, but at the same time doing it in an ethical manner. And I didn't see that in my days when I worked in the agencies. I think it was too client focused. We have to get them results. SEO was, it was still, it was an unknown quantity by all accounts. And I think in the last 5 years, people have really become, we get it. I mean, this is obviously what spurred it on, is people thinking, well, I'm going to look on the phone, I'm going to find something. If you can't find me online, first and foremost, then you don't exist. You don't get, and COVID is that wonderful sort of step change, albeit it's been, bad for a lot of businesses, and I heart for them, but it also brings about opportunity to see where, like you said, you can see the wood for the trees
Mm.
and move your business forward. So that said, I know you've already got plans, you're already expanding, you've got more staff. Where do you see yourself? And I hate the question because it's a loaded question by all accounts. Where do you see yourself in a couple of years' time, 5 years' time?
Okay, no, very happy to answer that. So in a couple of years, so the lot when I took, well, 2.5 years ago, I set a 5-year plan.
Right.
So, and that was, I was 35 at the time. I'm now 37 and a half. So I am literally halfway through.
Don't tell you my age then.
I am halfway through my 5-year plan. So we set out a 5-year vision of where we needed to go from, and so we are right where we need to be in terms of being halfway through that 5-year cycle. So in a couple of years, the plan is to get the agency over the next 2 years. We'll get the agency to at least 20 people. The model sees us being between 20 and 25 people. We won't need to go. Based on our current modeling and plans, we won't need to go beyond that in terms of the being big enough to cope but small enough to care. And because we're a single discipline, we're all about search. So we have a single discipline. I'm a big believer in being a master of one, not a jack of all trades, agency or business. So we stay very firmly in our lane. So the plan, we will be, we have revenue targets. We have, we know what that looks like in terms of the team numbers and the structure, which again, for anyone out there that is listening, that is, if you're whatever stage of business is at, let me tell you, your structure and your plans will continually change. The number of times I've set something in place thinking, right, this is absolutely how it's going to be, and then it continues to evolve, and then something changes and I have to re-look at things. That happens regularly. So we will, we'll be, essentially our top line will be a 7-figure agency very comfortably. We'll have about 20-25 people, and we'll be working with a lot of SME clients. And on a personal note, I will, the aim for me is to get the agency to a point where firstly it can run without me in it. Which is always the dream, right? You build an agency, you want it to run without you needing to be in it. I am an SEO geek at heart, so I will always have a hand in. I will always be working within the agency. But it would be nice to get to the point where I could maybe do it part-time, maybe drop from, I've sort of said it would be nice when I get to my 40s to be able to drop down to maybe 3 days a week. That would be a real luxury. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but you never know. In a couple of years, we might get there. And that's the plan.
You could spend more time with your little boy then.
Well, this is it. I'm going to need to, because he's obsessed with trains. He's got me building a model railway in the garage at the moment. So it's yeah, that's the plan.
And that's an expensive hobby. Right. Okay. So yeah, I get that. Perfect. And I love the vision of that. You mentioned it there. Is that when you're making plans, be open to the idea of plans don't have to be rigid. They can be dynamic. And realistically, businesses are dynamic because they need to be agile. I think if anything, we've seen it from the legacy of the companies that have fallen over, Toys R Us, Maplin, Debenhams, Courts, you name it. They just haven't had a model that was agile, and that's no disservice to them. It's a case of they built something, they leveraged it in a particular way, and that was hard then to change the model. Where I think new businesses are going forward are those that are expanding. You have the opportunity to create the roadmap. You can say, sorry, go on.
No, I was good. That's really important. It's a really important point, and it comes back to one of the big things for me that we're working on, which I sort of kind of alluded to in as much as the total team size. But one of the biggest things that we've done over the last 3 years, and it's a really important part of our culture and our sort of business philosophy, is for me it's about championing youngsters and bringing them in to agency life and giving them that opportunity. So some of the people in our current team have joined us over the last 3 years, had no experience. We bring them in, we mold them, we train them, we develop them, and then we watch them fly, and we watch them build amazing careers. And one of my managers now, Naomi, who you would have seen me post about numerous times, she joined us 3 years ago as a junior, no experience, but she had that spark, that twinkle in her eye, and we just thought she's a very switched on young lady. And we've since developed her, and she's now one of my SEO managers, an absolutely pivotal role within the company, and has an amazing career ahead of her, and will end up probably running the agency one day. And similarly, there's several others that have come in over the last couple of years that we've done that for. So, and actually later this year, we call it the Evergreen Careers Initiative. We launch it every year, and we bring in however many people. This year, we're actually planning to go bigger than we've ever done, and actually bring in 4 to 5 people. And these will be no experience necessary, but just have to have a desire to gain experience. And so for that piece is so important in terms of the company culture, because for me, yes, we want to grow. Yes, we want to be profitable. Yes, personally, I want to be able to step back in a few years, but there's a bigger, and yes, we want to deliver for all of our clients. They're kind of givens of any agency, tick, 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 tick. For me, it's about that legacy and that sense of purpose. And I love training and developing and giving the opportunities. And at the moment, I've got three youngsters in the team at the moment that are all just, I can see them, and you can just, when you sit back and you can just see people flourishing and you can just, they're getting it. And just the excitement, the spark, that is huge. And so for me, that is such a key part of the legacy of Evergreen, is to be seen not just as a great agency, great provider, but someone that is genuinely championing talent and giving people the opportunity to break into industry. That's a massive part of our sort of philosophy and culture, and kind of what we do here day to day.
And okay, wow, there was a lot taken in there. Everything ticked the boxes from my point of view, and anybody who's watching or listening to this is realizing the people you employ are pivotal to your company. The things that, and we'll hark back to a couple of things that re-tick boxes: creative and culture. 2 of the things that will basically say, right, when you employ people and you trust them with your prized possession, something you've invested in, there is that element of trust. You need to know that they care enough about it, like you do. Maybe not to the same degree, but enough that they do care. So giving them that sort of opportunity and let them flourish, so they become these sponges that they soak up that wealth of knowledge, and then will escalate and hopefully take you to a 3-day working week. But more importantly, they can autonomously work and they can manage clients on their own, and you feel confident enough to just step back and let them deal with it, even when some things will go sideways, which is inevitable. Okay, that leads me to the next question. And obviously, if you've got staff like that, then what is your current role? How is your day-to-day sort of planned? What do you do strategically? And then how do you see that sort of passing, as it were, the mantle to someone else?
Okay, so at the moment, my role it varies. Is the honest truth of it. You know, the on paper, my role is I lead on the business development, marketing, and sales on paper. So I'm minimal SEOing these days. So I have the team that do the SEO. We have an SEO department, we have a PR department, we have a PPC department, and then we have project managers. And for me, where I sit is sort of overseeing that, but actually it's really my job is to drive the agency forward. That said, I always have a hand in the SEO, so I am heavily involved with the strategic direction of our client accounts, because it's ultimately I just want to have an involvement. I want to have a say in where we're taking a client and how we're going to get there, because I think I just bring a sort of a legacy, a long-standing approach to SEO, and it's just another
the captain
voice.
of the ship approach, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not steering the boat, you're not putting the sails up, and you're not scrubbing the deck, but you're ensuring it's all going in the right direction.
Exactly that. So yeah, so that is mine. But then the nature of being an MD is, you know, you're pulled in all directions. You're doing a million and one things. And do you know what? I love it, because the way I look at it is, for the best part of 15 years, I spent learning web dev and learning SEO and really immersing myself in that world. And I still do. I still read. I still get endless newsletters and notifications and social media updates and you name it. But what I'm loving right now, and sort of living my best life right now, is I feel like I'm a kid in a toy shop again, because I've got a whole new bunch of skills that I've got to learn. You know, learning to run and grow a business, learning how to effectively manage and structure and build a team, learning all the things you don't have to worry about as a freelancer. Doing forecasts, planning, running P&Ls and budgeting and all of that proper business stuff. I hadn't done that 3 years ago, so I'm having to learn all that. So I've constantly got my head in business growth books and all of that kind of side of it, which is a whole new skill set. It's like I've got a whole new bunch of skills I have to learn. And the crazy thing is, the more I learn, the more I realize, wow, I've got so much more to learn.
That's a mantra I have. The more I learn, the less I know. Because you scratch the surface and then you realize, oh my God, there's another mountain to go and climb.
That is exactly what I am. That's me right now, and that has been me for the last 2.5 years, and I love it. That's what gets you up in the morning. Is you just think, what am I going to learn today? How can I improve? How can I get better at this? How can I fix this problem? And that's just how, what's better than that?
But I think that is the passion. I had that strong passion, not so much these days, different road, different journey. But when I started my business, I had that strong passion. I'd be in 4 a.m. in the morning and I'd be doing crazy shit. I'd be there over Christmas, changing things, because I loved what I did. I was immersive. And I think that's the approach. It's taking an immersive approach. You mentioned it there about learning. We talk about it all the time nowadays, CPD, continued professional development. I think employers and employees are just as savvy. I want to employ somebody as an employer. I want to employ somebody who wants to learn an industry. Like you mentioned it earlier, that spark, that thirst, desire to learn, because you can teach them anything. But if they just come in with the idea of, I've got some SEO skills and I'll treat it as a 9-to-5 job, they'll do that level of competency, where somebody will go beyond that. There's no ceiling. And that is the differentiator. So that leads me to a very contentious question again. I love it, asking some awkward ones. Is what's your interview process like then?
Okay, that's not a question I get asked very often. So our interview process starts.
Don't tell me it's all formatic and contrived.
No. So it does vary a little bit depending on the role, but for me, I like to really get to know someone personally, during the interview process. So initially it would start in the usual way. What I love it when people do it is they show a bit of creativity in how they reach out, right? So I've had people record us videos, I've had people send us letters, I've had people do things in a little bit different a way, which I love. That is a great way of making a good first impression. We'll have phone calls, we'll set test projects. We'll then invite people in to do presentations, sometimes to the top to our senior team, sometimes to the whole agency. We will, depending on how far the interview process goes, we will almost always take people out, and we'll go out for a lunch, we'll go out for a beer, we'll take people out of a work environment, and I want to put them into a social setting. And we've done things before where we've actually people we've been interviewing, or people that we're liking or that we're seeing as a place, we've actually taken them on socials with our team. So we've taken people we've been interviewing on we go as a team, we go and watch the ice hockey quite regularly. That's like one of the things we do. We've taken people along to that, and it's because I want to put them in the thick of the team and see those dynamics. Because as I say, depending on the level, the skill is one part, but actually making sure that they will fit with the team. And I did it literally because we've got 5 vacancies currently, and one of the things that I spoke to a chap yesterday, and really good. It was a really positive interview. It was first interview for, about 30 minutes we were on the call, really positive. And one of the things I said to him, I said, look, from here, yes, I will set you a test project. Yes, we'll get into a bit more of the nitty gritty in terms of the detail and the specifics of the role, because it's a senior role. I said, but what I need you to do is go and do your homework on us. And I literally said, go and trawl my LinkedIn, go and find as much information as you can about me and about the team. Go and connect with the team. Go and just get to know everyone online as much as you can, because I said you'll get a really good sense of our culture and who we are as an agency, so that when you come back here, you know if we're the right fit for you. And for me, that's the big thing. And you earlier you mentioned Josie, it was birthday yesterday, and she's been with us. She's brilliant. She's one of our content team. She's amazing. She's been with us for a couple of years now. She relocated for the role, and during her interview process, I put so much. One of the things that she subsequently told me in weeks and months gone by when she joined was that she said that she was so grateful for the fact that most of the interview was not about the job. It was about her personally, what it would mean for her in relocating and how it would work. And she said, she said to me, she said that you cared so much about what would this mean to you and your family, and the dynamics, and how would it work, and the practicalities of it. And we in our interview, we were on Rightmove looking at the cost of places. That was the interview. It wasn't. And she said, and that was just the natural for me. I just thought I just wanted to make sure that she cared, that it was right for her. And at the end of that interview, I said, this was a couple of years ago, I said to her, I said, look, go away and actually have a think about the practicalities of moving. Go and look at some places to live and this, that, and the other. And if that works, then we can talk about the role. And it was stuff like that. And it's just, I think it's that. It's kind of putting the person before the job is what I always try and do.
Yeah, and I commend that, because I think that is the smart approach these days. I think that we've gone through a culture for too many years where marketing was, you have to have the qualification, and then ideally some experience, and then you work your way up with more experience, and you have to deliver that in a time sensitive manner, in a controlled manner that's professional, and everybody's going about their business. And whilst we did that for decades, it was a job. And it very much defined that word as a meaning. Whereas I think nowadays we are much more realizing, Iceland have just trialed it with their 4-day working week and realized it is more productive. You've got Bill Gates, who says it, happy wife, happy life, happy life, happy wife. We all know that if we can introduce, I like when I'm sitting in the office with the girls in the sales team, and they're talking about Love Island and all those other bits and pieces. It's nice that they feel comfortable in that culture, that they can be them. And then when they've got to switch it on for work, they switch it on. Nobody should be there. And this is, testament to you, as it should be for most people building a business. It's your management style. It's not a tyrant. It's not dictatorship. It's inclusive. It's nurturing. And those are such strong keys. Granted, there's always a bottom line. There's always a case of fulfillment and deadlines and making sure we win a client and a proposal and such like. Totally get that. No one's not aware of that. But how you get there is that crucial ingredients. And I think for me, this is the love of when I've done lots of SEO work and I've worked with clients, is you get to see behind the scenes. You get to see their company. You get to ask probing questions that for the average person, they would never tell you things. So they tell you all the things that are going wrong and where they're at and all the problems they've had. How can you fix it? And I love that honesty. and you're given the opportunity to be part of that team, whether you've done it freelance or you've come into the company. So, right, okay, my next little question then is, once you've got that sort of ethos, and it sounds quite strong with you, and this is, I can attest, it's not out there in bucket loads. It is refreshing to start seeing it creeping into a lot of businesses and social media posting a different set of content. Do you do some sort of standard operating procedures, some SOPs or roadmaps, in order to say, right, whilst we've got this happening in an organic and sort of natural way, do you sort of document it so you can, because bear in mind, if you're expanding, you know, that's when you start losing control. That's when it becomes difficult to nurture this sort of culture.
Are you talking specifically from the culture, from the team dynamic? That, are you talking on that side?
It could be both levels. The level of obviously the work, obviously,
Yeah.
to ensure the standard doesn't slip because you become so big. I mean, it's very much the trilogy that the supermarket industry use, is that if you're Aldi and Lidl's, you work much harder to achieve the same output as do the likes of Tesco's and the big four, purely because you don't throw as many resources at it. You are strategic in your approach of how you put. Every person you employ has to deliver something. That's
Yeah.
the bottom line.
Yeah.
So that's from a work point of view, but also then from a point of view where the culture changes. I think most CEOs will kind of tell you when they get up to 100 people, they know everybody's name. They know their personalities. They can socialize with them. Like you mentioned, you could be at the coalface and you can get integrated within the project and say, guys, what are you doing today? How's it going with the client? Once you get over that, it becomes more clinical because it becomes more fractured.
No, I completely agree. So that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have no aspirations to go to 100 or even close to that, because it just wouldn't.
99 and stick.
It wouldn't work for us. Not a chance. So on the work front, really easy. We as you grow and you add more people and you build more departments and you have to look at your systems and processes. We've done that a number of times and actually realized when it was just me, the way my process and systems were in my head. When I brought on the first 2 or 3 people, I had to go, okay, I need to actually explain this and have it written down. I need to document this, this way of working, my way, my evergreen way of working. So we did that. When we then went from 2 or 3 up to 6 or 7, okay, the 2 or 3 didn't work. We had to change it to 6 or 7, but it was still fairly informal. Because it was very easy at half a dozen, 6, 8 of you to kind of know what everyone else is just doing instinctively. When you suddenly go from 7, 8 people up to sort of 13, 14, 15, and COVID hits, that really forces your hand, because suddenly you aren't in earshot of everyone else. You don't know what's going on. And so in 2020, and again in the over the last few months of 2021, we've had to document and actually build a proper process and system. And that culminated in very recently, in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, I have had to rebuild and rethink our entire project management system, process, way of working. And that has required me in the office various weekends. I had a stint in May where I worked, I think, 27 days straight of just getting up on the whiteboard and looking at our system, our ways of working, and realizing where the blockages were, where the pain points were, and then one by one addressing them, and then crucially in that process involving the team and having them help in terms of, so they bought into it and we rebuilt the system, and we've now launched it and it's working better than it ever has. So, but I fully anticipate that it will start to creak again in 12 months, and it's just part, and you've got to refine and grow. And that is on me as the company owner to spot that and then address it, but crucially involve the team, and that's part of the culture, to make sure it's my system, it's our system. Yeah. On the cultural side of things, that is, I think it comes down to when you're recruiting. So when you're building a team, we look for one of my senior team that sits in on all our interviews is essentially there to gauge whether they are evergreen enough in terms of their personality, right? And I'm there looking at from a skills perspective and so on, but we genuinely have someone interview who's there just to look at sort of character and how they would fit and would it work. And again, it comes from having a very strong culture and a very strong ethos, and having very clear values that are not just things that you plaster on a wall, but actually you live and breathe those things. Yeah. that ensures that when you bring new people on, your existing people, you know, are reiterating and saying and doing and acting and portraying the same things to your new people as if it was you. And as a business owner, that is one of the most satisfying things I have ever experienced in business, is when I'm sat at my desk, and it's a very open environment, there's no offices, we're all open plan, as you know, in modern agency. But when I'm sitting there, and it's happened countless times, and I will hear one of my team explaining a process, a system, a way of working in such a way to a junior member or a new member of the team, and I can listen to them and think it's like I'm saying it, you know. Or when you hear them turn around and say things like, no, that's not the Evergreen way of doing it. No, we don't do that here. That's not how we do it.
I love how that branding gets in everywhere. That's it. But it's nice because that's branding.
But it is, and that's what it is. It's about for
It's
me.
hard to make branding. You can make sales and you
Yeah.
can create marketing campaigns, but to leave people with the taste of branding,
Yeah.
that is something just an organic. It either happens or it doesn't. So,
and that is genuinely what we've got. You know, you would hear every day in this office, you would
Yeah.
hear people refer to the Evergreen way of working. That's not Evergreen in its approach. And it has become part of just our natural language.
Yeah.
And that ensures that people can see, okay, oh, it's not very Evergreen. It's not our way of working. It's not reflective of our culture. And that's very, very strong. And so I know I can leave this office and that will be maintained across the team. And that is how we can ensure that when we bring new people in, and yes, we've got documentation and training and so on and so forth, but it's the conversations over the coffee machine. If they're reflecting your culture, you're onto something special.
Hats off. It's the right approach. It seems easy. It's not. It's hard work. It's putting those hours in like you did in May, because I read your post where you did the 26 days straight. Yeah, been there, done that. But do you do like sort of Ran Friskin approach where you get the whiteboard and then record yourself as well? Is that part and parcel of your process?
All the time. I mean,
right, okay.
Honestly, I've got a whiteboard, I say, in this very room right there. And
I got one right there too.
The number of times, and I must sound like a madman, but the way if I have a problem, I'm a problem solver at heart. So
yeah,
if I've got and in business, you're forever solving problems. You solve one, you're on to the next. You solve one, you're on to the next.
Post-it notes.
We love a post-it note. But
I love things like this. I use Notion as well and Trello, but it's all like you say, it's that problem solving. It's that constantly get the information and then visualize it.
Yeah, and so for me, one of the ways I do it is I visualize it, but I have to talk to myself. I must sound like a madman to anyone, but I'm here. I've spent whole weekends, honestly, here by myself, just fully running through, verbalizing, right, so if we do this, that means that, and can I break that? And to anyone else, you'd sound crazy, but just, as you say, visualizing it, talking it through, recording yourself, listening to it back, all of those tricks just help you crystallize things. And then you involve a team, and like literally I brought them up and I was like, right, this is the system I've built, guys. This is what I think. I can't break it. Can you try and break it? Yeah, and then they go and break it. You go, brilliant. And then you move on.
Yeah. Okay, right. So that leads me, and I love that process, because you know what, the two agencies I worked in, there was none of that. You know, I do think that probably harks back to a time where it would have come in time, because they would have realized the importance of it. It was so client focused that there was no internal nurturing whatsoever. And I think that's a key ingredient in all businesses, not agencies per se, any business. The people you employ are strategic to the way that you will move your goals forward. Some will help you and some will hinder you, and selecting them we have to get away from that prescribed way of doing interviews. You've got to know the person. You've got to know that when they come in, they're going to become, symbiotic with the rest of your team, because one personality can throw the whole thing out. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's for the right reason. I mean, I was a project manager in one role, and my job was to come in as a catalyst and make things better. Well, that means you're going to knock heads. Granted, that's the remit. But when you're trying to grow a team from something you know is already working, that careful selection of somebody who wants to learn, nurture their career, but also be part of that culture, it's cherry picking. It makes all the difference.
A great piece of advice my coach said to me is, you always hire on sort of cultural fit and work ethic rather than skill. Skill is very low down my list of priorities expertise and experience is very low down in terms of the list of main things I'm looking for. one of the best things I ever had is take your time, take your time to hire, but fire fast if they're wrong. And that has we've had to do that. We've had to let people go that haven't been the right fit. It's just part and parcel of business. It's not the nice part, but you have to accept that if you're going to build a team that's going to be the right team, you're going to have the good. You've got to take some of the bad as well.
First boss I worked for, I must have done anywhere between 500, 600 interviews. And her philosophy was, if you do the hiring, you got to do the firing. But what I learned is if they're not the right fit, I am stunting their growth. They need to go and find something better. And I always thought that was the smart way of sort of packaging it, is that you're not right for us, and therefore you're doing a disservice to yourself and as much as us, but really you need to go on a different journey that's going to be more beneficial to you. So to be honest, like, having taken that approach when I learned it in that role, I never found the firing that hard then. It was a case of, yes, it comes as bad news to some people, but most people are kind of expecting it when you get to that point. So there's always a negative side of a business, but the thing is, hopefully it's small, as compartmentalized, and you get on with it.
And also,
good deal with it.
I completely agree, and literally, I completely agree with that. And also for me, for me personally, I always try to be a human being about that situation, right? Not be hard. I like to think we've never had someone that's had to pop over to the agency. It's been positioned very much like that. Just the fit just isn't right. And actually, I've tried to make it as positive and as smooth as it possibly can be. We've never had someone kicking and screaming, had to be thrown out by security, or it's not part.
Reminds me of a story on the internet, doesn't it?
It just wouldn't, not a chance. It's just.
How did Rand describe it? If it was a case of being ejected from the building, it scaled 8 out of 10.
Yeah, so I've tried to avoid that, bless him. Yeah, no, exactly that. So I think, and that's important, I think, because it's, reflective. And also that's the thing, if you have a bad departure, that can actually have an impact on the rest of the team, actually, because they can see that. So it's always important, never burn your bridges, as my mum used to say.
My gran used to say that, never burn your bridges, you'd be surprised how many times you go over them. Right, which brings me on to a very nice part about inspiration. Who do you find inspiration from, previously and currently?
Oh, blimey. I mean, so many people. So for me, one of the things I love is LinkedIn. I'm very open and honest on LinkedIn, and anyone listening, please do connect with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'd love to sort of follow everyone's stories. And that's really where I get the most inspiration from, is that other agency owners, because there's so many amazing. For me, I'm in agency world. There are business owners, of course, but a lot of people I take inspiration from are agency owners and some business owners that are doing a much better job than I am, that run these teams that just are doing incredible work. And I look at them and I get insights into their business from what they post, and just take these tiny little insignificant nuggets, and that inspires me. And I have lots of relationships with these folks, and I'm the fanboy reaching out to them, going, I just aspire to do what you're doing. I think it's amazing, and I try to follow their lead, really, and take learnings from them. And what's been really lovely that I've seen over recent years is a real sort of camaraderie between agency owners. It's not, you may be in competition effectively for a client, but there's still this sense of like, we're all in this together, especially, and that was definitely. You're
shaping an industry.
And that's and I think that that it's been very present over the last 18 months through COVID and all of that. But I say it comes down to one of the greatest things about the SEO space is it's still evolving. Not us. Yeah. No agency in the SEO space specifically can absolutely cast iron go guarantee we know exactly what Google wants, because Google have never gone on record of telling us, right? They just say we've got 200 ranking factors, kind of, we'll tell you what we think is important, but really good luck to you type of thing. So it's all a guessing game, and crucially, excitingly, it's still evolving. We're still learning. Google are constantly bringing out updates and changes, and that means we have to stay on our toes, and we have to keep learning and evolving, and that brings a sense of community to the industry, which I think is just fabulous.
I think you mentioned it earlier, and the Evergreen epitomizes it, to be honest. When BERT came out, what was it? The bidirectional encoding representations for transformers. Lovely terminology as an acronym, but basically it could read backwards. And you thinking at that stage, I think that was 2018. If that's where they're at, and yet as a human being, we can skim over a page, we can read backwards, forwards, any way we choose, you realize Google's got a long way to catch up. And I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I run a couple of affiliate sites, and there are so many voids on the internet that they're just wanting. So I do honestly believe that Google is like a young child. It's still finding its way, it's growing. There's so much growth required on the internet. It is a wonderful environment to work in from an SEO perspective, but I do believe that you do that from an ethical point of view, because that's where each sort of, and the Medic update sort of leveled the playing field to make sure that people were doing things right. So that when I'm typing in that search query box, I'm getting as close to the answer that I need to have, as opposed to where we were 10 years ago, and it was everything to do with Viagra.
Yeah, well,
Or
do you know
protein
what?
sites.
Do you know what? Just on that, one of the things that for me is has been a core philosophy, and it's something I embed into everyone here, is this understanding. And I say to people, look, if you want to know how to do, great content marketing, how to build the right sort of links, how to do the right sort of outreach, how to technically optimize a website, whatever facet, whatever department someone is in at Evergreen, what I say to them is I say, look, because often people have a tendency to overthink and over-engineer and make things way too complicated. I say, look, it's very simple. Do whatever you are doing, work as if Google didn't exist, right? Work as if you were doing it. Because if you ask yourself, would I create this content if Google didn't exist, then you're probably doing it for the right reasons. Because yeah, I would create this content if Google didn't exist, because my target customer absolutely have this question. They need that help. They want that insight. They need that expertise. Great, then create it. Yeah. Would I want that link? Would I do this outreach? Would I run that PR campaign? Well, would you do it if Google, if you're not trying to manipulate Google? Would you do it if because you genuinely feel that your target audience are going to read that publication, they're going to be on that blog, they're going to find value in seeing your link on whatever site and then being a referral to that website? If that's genuinely, you go, yeah, well, actually, yeah, from a business, from a customer consumer standpoint, absolutely there's value there, then go and do it. Yeah. Where it falls down is people go, well, no, I'm not thinking about the user, I'm thinking about manipulating Google, and it comes back to manipulation. When you do that, that's the wrong path to tread. And so for me, it comes down to, I just say every week, I say to the team constantly, would you do that if Google didn't exist? Yeah. And when you think like that, the game changes, and crucially everything simplifies, and it crystallizes what you actually need to do and why you're doing it.
That is a fantastic knowledge bomb. I cannot attest to what you've said there in a very simple format is absolutely true. I think whilst we have two masters, we have the search engines and then we have the reader or the customer, as it were. We don't get to them unless we get through the gatekeepers first. The SEO industry has been held back for too many years because we've been looking at the tools, and the shiny object syndrome has been the problem, and saying, yeah, but the search volume here and the keyword difficulty. And this is where I've started enjoying the affiliate marketing route, is that you've got people like John Dykstra, who just says, I go for a zero search volume term. I go for what I think is the right term that somebody's asking, which tends to be the long tail keywords, because they realistically build the right entities. So, rather than I seen it yesterday, we were about to launch another product into the US, 100 billion probiotic. And I won't give you the rhyme and the reason, but there's an ethical side very much to it. You type for it, and it's all the modifiers come up. Best probiotic for this in 2020, and you see all those modifiers on there. You think, yeah, that's manipulation straight away. I need to find genuine content, and I do feel, from Google's point of view, they've got a long way to go. Bless them, to try and solve that problem, because as SEO managers and affiliate marketers, we do manipulate day in, day out. And that's the difficulty. If you're looking for an 8-legged dining room table, you'll find one. But that's not necessarily the right answer for what a dining room table should be. And I think ethics will win in the long run. So building it from that point of view, what would you do if Google didn't exist, I think is the right approach. Yeah. Right. On that note, we have just come up to the hour mark. I'm sure I could ask you lots of questions regarding some of the tools you use and your clients, and look at that sort of side without giving too much of your secret sauce away. But I think it would be nice to do a future interview, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, similar. We could talk all morning, couldn't we? Quite happily.
We can, because I like your fresh approach. And to be fair, and I will put the links below, I've seen that resonate in all your content, which has been refreshing to the norm that's out there. People talking about, oh, I've had this win, or this is how it's changing in the industry. You've stepped back and you've said, right, this is what we're doing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we're on a journey, as all businesses are. You know, give 20 people the same resources, they will run 20 different businesses, because you don't know how their decision-making process will be or what they prioritize. Those are things where tools will never come into it. Those are human beings. So as an entrepreneur, and this is, you know, as I'm talking to you, but obviously talking to whoever's listening and watching this, be you, believe in yourself, because that's probably the hardest thing, more so when you're doing SEO work and you're thinking, I'm putting all this investment in on the behalf of the client and they're trusting me. I hope we get a result. But due diligence wins out at the end of the day. Right, it only leaves me to say many thank you, Aaron. I do really appreciate the coming on to the interview. I will make this available to you afterwards. Do you have any final questions or any sort of final piece of advice you'd like to leave for the audience?
Well, just to say thank you so much for having me. As I say, genuinely really enjoyed this. It's been such good fun, and more than happy to come back on. And I would just say, yeah, anyone in business, whatever stage you're at, just remain confident and focused on the end goal, because you will have peaks, troughs, highs and lows, but just stay focused on the end goal. Be thinking three to 5 steps ahead at all times, and go into your office or your back bedroom, wherever you are, and just have a smile on your face and think, today I'm going to absolutely smash it out of the park. Do that every single day, and I promise you, you will.
Thank you. Lovely. Many thanks, Aaron. Signing out. Speak to you again. Thank you to my guest today, Aaron Rudman-Hawkins. I think you'll agree his enthusiasm, his passion, his desire to run a better agency that's not only going to nurture staff that he's got now, but those for down the road, and the way that's going to benefit future clients is without doubt commendable. I'm lost for words, because it's so refreshing to see somebody who takes a different approach. It's not just about the bottom line, it's about the business you're building and the people that are contained within it. So refreshing. As I mentioned, all the links will be below. Aaron's bios below, and also links to his website, and more importantly to his LinkedIn profile. Do check it out. It is always refreshing to read and insightful for you, upcoming entrepreneur, or if you're on that journey already, to see how you should be engaging with not just your staff and your clients, but also with the real world, the bigger picture, in order to get people to see and buy into your particular journey, because your journey is unique to you and there's always interest to be found. I'm Andy Woolley. Hopefully you've enjoyed these interviews. I will keep doing them. If you want to reach out at any point and be on one of these interviews and you have some knowledge to share, be that in the business sector, digital marketing, SEO or data, please contact me. The details are below, and I look forward to seeing you in another interview where we get more and more knowledge bombs. Again, it only remains for me to say thank you for joining me. Thank you to Aaron Rudman-Hawkins, and I look forward to seeing you again. Signing out.